something wrong.
Hi, I'm Stuart Raj, and in this episode of Wag the Dragon, we're going to talk about the importance of names in Asia and how you getting them right can make all the difference in your interactions across Asia. Another important point is, should you, living, working, doing business in Asia, take on an Asian name? For example, my full name is Stuart J. Raj. Now you can see that Raj at the end is an Indian surname taken from my father's side. I also have a Chinese name, Wang Huaile. Now, I'll go into depth about that name in the Chinese section of this series, but there's a reason why I have that name. And in Thailand, everybody knows me as my middle name, Jae. Now, again, there's a reason for that. So, should you take on a foreign name when you're in Asia, or a new name? And if you do, how should you go about making that name for yourself? We're going to be talking about that through this series. Stick to the end, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it.
Something wrong.
你叫咩名啊? So before we go any further, make sure you've clicked like and click the bell down there so every time I come up with a new clip, you're going to get it in your inbox and it's going to help you do business better in Asia. Dale Carnegie once said that a person's name to them is the sweetest sound in any language. Now, I don't know if Dale Carnegie had ever traveled across to Asia, but if he did, he would find that that statement has real particular relevance here. There's so much in a name here, and the way that you understand it, the way that you read the metadata embedded within and around the name, and most importantly, the way that you use it, the way you pronounce it, who you use it with, and how you use it is going to have a huge first impression of you, and it could have a lasting impression of the way people think of you and the people deal with you across Asia. Last week, I was at an industry awards event here in Bangkok. Now, these people, they were Europeans and they had set up an organization where people in the industry actually have to write an essay in English, which is already an interesting hurdle as it is for an awards ceremony in Asia. But anyway, they had to write an essay, or people had to write an essay nominating somebody, and they would go, and then a whole bunch of Westerners would fly into Asia, read through these essays that were written about the people, and they would choose from all these different categories with the industry who the finalists would be. Now, the event that I went to, everybody from the industry was going there because they wanted to see who were the finalists. And so people had actually flown into Thailand from neighboring countries because it was covering right across Asia. And as it got to the moment everybody was waiting for, they were live streaming, and the judges got up and they were there to announce who the finalists were for each category. People were waiting. They were listening. The first judge got up. Blah, 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 blah. They butchered the names. Nobody had a clue what they were saying. There were Vietnamese names, there were Thai names, there were Indian names, there were Chinese names, there were Hokkien names, there were Cantonese names, there were Indonesian names, there were Malaysian names. Not one name was pronounced correctly. Now, after about 3 names, people started talking. People thought, oh, I've had enough of this. We don't need to listen to that. Not only was it not interesting, not engaging to them, but it was actually insulting them. All these people that had put so much in and they were excited and they were welcoming these Westerners to their country and their part of the world to give out these awards to them. And it's almost as though that we say in Thai, du thuk. They really looked down on them. They didn't take the time or the care to even learn how to pronounce the people's names that they had chosen. And so what happened was slowly a few people started talking to each other, and then the person reading out the names started to get upset and saying, excuse me, and they wanted quiet. Fair enough, they were presenting, but it started to get worse and it compounded, and by the end of it, you had several judges going up. People had just basically turned their back on it. They didn't want to hear what was going on. Now, if you go back to Dale Carnegie, a person's name to them is the sweetest sound in any language. And so, just for me, I know my name is Stuart J. Raj. Some people, when they meet me, they just hear the Raj and they just think, oh, Raj is a first name, so they call me, Raj, come over here. And for me, that's like, hey, wait a minute. And it could even get me a little upset. It's almost like fighting words calling someone their last name. Now, for me, that's it. For other people, they mightn't mind. But for somebody to come in and then you're constantly hearing your name butchered, nah, that's something. So what I thought I'd do in this series, there's not enough time in one clip to go through every country, but I'm going to do a trip over the next few clips going through Chinese and Chinese language names from Mandarin to Cantonese to Hokkien and different names that you'll find across Singapore, Malaysia. So we'll look at a Chinese set. Then we're going to look at Korean, Japanese names, and Vietnamese. Now, the reason these are all in together is because they're last name, first names. If you didn't know that, well, you've got one important point already, but there's more. After that, we're going to have a look at first name, last name. So things like in Thailand. I'm going to show you how actually in Thailand, people didn't used to have last names. People only had their first name and they had a number which was called sakdina that they were born into. Almost like a caste system. And the higher the number, the more land they were allowed to have. The more land they had, they would marry somebody in that high number and they would accumulate the number of the person that they married, their family, and their whole goal in life was to maintain that high number and not let anybody from the lower ranks come up and get power over them. Now what happened was when that system got abolished, they started to give surnames instead. The king thought it wasn't fair that they had this system, so gave surnames, but people equated the surnames with the number that they knew who were the powers that be. And so to this day in Thailand, there's a system. If you receive somebody's name card in Thailand, you probably wouldn't want to call out their last name because Thais just know, and a person's surname tells a lot about them. So stay tuned for another clip about Thai names and also Lao names. Then we'll move down across to Southeast Asia, or more of Southeast Asia, so Indonesian names, Malaysian, Singapore, what names we have in there, and of course we have Malay, Chinese names, Tamil names, and the Western names. And then we'll look finally at Myanmar and see what the names there are in Burma and how they differ. Most importantly, I'm going to go across pronunciation standards for the names. So we'll go over the names and put it into practice straight away. So for Chinese, we'll look at the Hanyu Pinyin in the mainland, we'll look at Wei Jiaos in Taiwan, then we'll look at systems in Thailand, in Laos, in Vietnam, in Burma, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines. We'll look at how you pronounce names, how you read them correctly, and even if it's in different styles of writing, how you'll be able to pronounce them close to correct, and most importantly, how you can read that metadata within a name so you can tell what somebody's gender is from a name, who you should be using that, what titles are embedded within the name, what titles you should be added to the name. All these things are important. So stay tuned. These clips are coming out in the next week. I'm doing this preliminary clip just to show you. So if you're a journalist, if you're a person doing business in Asia, if you're a person that's just living in Asia, or you have a partner, a wife, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend who speaks one of the languages or has an Asian name, it's going to be in your interest to do this. And after seeing these clips, there's no excuse for getting names wrong. I'm Stuart J. Raj, and stay tuned for this series of Getting Names Right in Asia with Wag the Dragon. Thanks for watching. Bye.